What would you do if the person you love the most became the one who hurt you the deepest? This is Maria's story, and it all started with a fairy tale, or so she thought. When love turns cold. Maria was radiant on her wedding day. The way Daniel looked at her as she walked down the aisle, she felt like the most beautiful woman in the world. They danced the night away, laughing, dreaming of a future full of love and happiness. Daniel whispered promises of forever into her ear, and she believed every word. The first few years were magical. They traveled, stayed up late talking about their dreams, and couldn't keep their hands off each other. But when they decided to start a family, Maria's life shifted. Motherhood brought her joy she'd never known before, but it also brought exhaustion, sleepless nights, and changes to her body. Maria's once flat stomach now bore the marks of carrying life. Her face was softer, her clothes fit tighter, but her heart was fuller. She didn't mind the changes, not at first. Daniel loved her, didn't he? Then came the first crack. At a family gathering, Maria bent down to pick up her youngest child, and Daniel's voice cut through the room. You've really let yourself go, haven't you? His tone was light, almost teasing, but the words stung. Laughter followed, and Maria forced a smile, hoping no one noticed the tears welling in her eyes. Dana began staying out late, claiming he was working overtime. Maria wanted to believe him, but something felt off. He stopped asking about her day, stopped holding her hand, and avoided looking at her when she spoke. The man who once couldn't get enough of her now seemed to be avoiding her altogether. Maria busied herself with the kids and housework, hoping things would go back to normal. But the silence between them grew louder. One night, as she folded laundry, she found a shirt in his bag that wasn't his. It smelled of perfume, expensive and floral, nothing like hers. Her heart raced as she held it up. Could it belong to a colleague? A friend? She convinced herself it was a misunderstanding, but the doubts lingered. Days turned into weeks, and the signs became impossible to ignore. Daniel's phone buzzed late at night, and he always seemed to have a reason to leave the room. When Maria asked about his day, he answered in one-word sentences. The distance between them felt like a chasm Maria couldn't cross. One night, as they sat in the living room, Daniel scrolled through his phone, ignoring her completely. Maria tried to speak, but the words caught in her throat. How could she ask him if he still loved her when she already knew the answer? One rainy Tuesday, Maria was cleaning the kitchen when Daniel's phone buzzed on the counter. He never left it lying around, but this time he had. She glanced at the screen, intending to ignore it, but the message froze her in place. Can't wait to see you tonight, love. Last night was amazing. Her hands trembled as she unlocked the phone. The messages revealed everything. Texts, photos, even plans for a weekend getaway. Daniel wasn't just unfaithful, he was living another life. Maria sat at the table, the phone still in her hand, as the rain pounded against the windows. Her chest felt tight, and tears streamed down her face. By the time Daniel came home that evening, Maria was ready. She held up his phone and asked, "Who is she?" Daniel's expression shifted from shock to annoyance. "You went through my phone?" he said, his voice cold. "Don't turn this on me, Daniel," Maria snapped, her voice trembling. "You've been cheating on me." Daniel didn't deny it. Instead, he crossed his arms and said, "Maybe if you took care of yourself, I wouldn't have to look elsewhere." The words hit Maria like a slap. She stared at him, her heart breaking into a million pieces. Maria tried to hold her family together. She started waking up early to exercise, skipped meals, and wore makeup again. She bought new clothes, hoping Daniel would notice. But his cruel remarks continued. At another family gathering, Maria reached for a piece of cake and Daniel smirked. "Are you sure you need that?" he said loudly, drawing laughter from the room. Maria felt humiliated. That night, she locked herself in the bedroom and stared at her reflection. Her stretch marks, once a badge of motherhood, now looked like scars. She touched her stomach and whispered, "What happened to us?" She thought about her children, sleeping peacefully in her beds. They deserved better. She deserved better. Maria spent weeks drowning in sadness after Daniel's hurtful words and the revelation of his infidelity. One day, while shopping for groceries, she bumped into an old schoolmate, Linda. They exchanged pleasantries, and before Maria could stop herself, her emotions spilled out. She told Linda about her crumbling marriage, her husband's cruelty, and how lost she felt. Linda listened carefully, her face filled with understanding. "Maria, you don't have to live like this. I've been there. Let me help you." Linda introduced her to a local women's support group. At first, Maria was hesitant. She didn't think talking about her problems with strangers would help. But during the first meeting, as she listened to other women share their stories of betrayal and healing, she felt an unexpected connection. These women were survivors, and their strength inspired her. Over time, Maria began to share her story. Each word she spoke felt like a burden being lifted off her shoulders. Linda became her biggest supporter, constantly reminding her, "You are stronger than you think. Don't let his words define you." Maria started making small changes. She began walking in the mornings while her kids were at home. The fresh air cleared her mind and gave her a sense of control. She joined an online class to learn bookkeeping, something she had always been curious about but never pursued. One day, Maria stood in front of her mirror and smiled. For the first time in years, she didn't see a broken woman. She saw someone determined to rebuild herself. Daniel noticed the changes. He sneered when she talked about her classes and mocked her when she went for walks. "What's the point? You are not going to fix anything," he said one evening. But Maria didn't respond. She simply looked at him and walked away. Inside, she knew she was no longer seeking his approval. She was doing this for herself. Maria spent months planning her next move. She saved every spare penny from her grocery budget, cutting corners wherever she could. She secretly contacted a lawyer who assured her that she had a strong case for custody. One morning, after Daniel left for work, Maria made a decision. She packed her and the children's belongings into a few bags. Careful not to take more than what she needed, she left a note on the kitchen table. "Daniel, I have had enough. I deserve better, and so do our children. Don't contact me unless it's about them. I'll be filing for divorce." She took her children to her mother's house, a warm and loving space where she finally felt safe. Her mother, though heartbroken to see Maria in pain, promised to support her every step of the way. When Daniel came home to an empty house, he was furious. He called Maria repeatedly, leaving angry voicemails. "You think you can just walk away? You will regret this," he shouted in one. But Maria didn't respond. Instead, she focused on her next steps. She filed for divorce and submitted the evidence of Daniel's infidelity to the courts. Her lawyer was confident they would win. In court, Daniel tried to manipulate the situation, portraying himself as a caring husband and father. But Maria's calm, composed demeanor and the evidence she presented left the judge unconvinced. The court granted Maria custody of the children along with child support. Daniel was ordered to attend counseling if he wanted visitation rights. For the first time in years, Maria felt like she had control over her life again. Years passed and Maria blossomed. She completed her bookkeeping course and started her own small business, managing accounts for local shops. She decorated her new apartment with her children, making it a home filled with love and laughter. Her mornings were no longer filled with dread, but with purpose. She dropped her kids off at school, worked with clients, and spent her evenings reading or baking with her children. Her life wasn't perfect, but it was hers and she loved it. One evening, as Maria helped her children with their homework, there was a knock at the door. She opened it to find Daniel standing there, looking disheveled and older than she remembered. "Maria," he began, his voice heavy with regret. "I've made mistakes. I was wrong and I see that now. Please give me another chance. I have changed." Maria stared at him, memories of the pain he caused flooding her mind. She thought about the night she cried alone, the cruel words he used to tear her down, and the strength it took to rebuild her. "Daniel," she said calmly, "I am glad you've changed, but I don't need you in my life anymore. I've already given myself a second chance, and it doesn't include you." Daniel pleaded, tears welling up in his eyes, but Maria was unmoved. She closed the door, feeling a sense of closure she didn't know she needed. That night, as she tucked her children into bed, her youngest asked, "Mom, are you happy?" Maria smiled and kissed her forehead. "Yes, my love, I am finally happy." And as she lay in bed, Maria felt a peace she hadn't known in years. Her story wasn't about the pain anymore. It was about her strength, her freedom, and the life she had built for herself and her children. Maria's journey wasn't just about surviving, it was about thriving, and that, she realized, was the greatest victory of all. The moral lesson behind the story is that men should always appreciate their wives. Motherhood is a blessing. So instead of body shaming your wife, help her to be the kind of woman you want, especially if you find out that she's putting in that effort. Hello family, with this we have come to the end of the story. Please drop on the comment section what you learned from this amazing story, and do not forget to click on the follow button for more interesting stories as this.